couple of years ago, my buddy and I were bored one afternoon and decided to explore an abandoned house. It was one that I had spotted earlier that week when I was out for a drive. We live in a town that is mostly suburbs, but if you drive 5 minutes north, it's all country roads, farmland, forest, etc. The abandoned house I spotted was in the middle of a field. There wasn't a paved road or a gravel driveway that led up to it, so we parked as close as we could on the side of the road. This area just seemed very rural, and everything was very overgrown. So we found ourselves having to walk through tall grass to reach it. When we got closer, we noticed that the house looked pretty old, most likely built in the early 1900s. There seemed to be plants engulfing the entire home, and part of the roof was missing from what looked like fire damage. It had obviously been abandoned for some time. My friend suddenly told me he was going to hang back as we came closer to the house. He couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. He said he was getting bad vibes. I decided, however, to keep going. When I reached the house, I looked in through the windows and saw lots of weather damage and signs of neglect. The door, however, was locked. I walked around the perimeter of the house and found a cellar door. It was unlocked. I entered and slowly started walking down an old wooden staircase. I got about halfway down and squinted, waiting for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. The only light source was the sunlight coming in from the open cellar door. It was full of old belongings. I noticed furniture and other junk. Then, in the far right corner, I saw what looked like a figure standing in the darkness, facing me. I felt my stomach drop. It was a tall person just standing there straight, with their arms at their side. It was so creepy, and I wasn't even sure if what I was seeing was real. I couldn't make out details like what they were wearing or any facial features. I stood there for a few seconds, staring back at them in shock. I thought it had to be my mind playing tricks on me. I squinted harder, trying to make out if what I was seeing was actually a tall figure, when suddenly it moved slightly. I jerked in reaction. I then heard the figure make a deep grunting sound. I panicked and ran up the stairs as fast as I could. When my friend saw the look on my face when I exited the basement, he started running toward the car. He said it looked like I had seen a ghost. As we drove away, I kept looking back to see if we were being followed, but nobody was there. I'm 28, female, and this is my story from years ago. Let's just say, for the sake of the story, my name's Jenna. I haven't been back to this same place since, and I always share this story with my friends. It's become a favorite, whether they believe it or not. I usually visit my family's cottage up north. I won't disclose specifically for privacy reasons, but we go every summer, and on occasion we'll go July 4th, Thanksgiving, stuff like that. It's a waterfront cottage facing a lake, surrounded by dense forest. It's located on a private beach, so you see your neighbor every once in a while. Everyone comes up north around the same time, so it wouldn't be uncommon to have a chat with others, and thus everyone knows each other and subsequently their business. My cottage sits between two others. One is inhabited quite frequently, and one is abandoned to my knowledge. My family and neighbors know that a European family, maybe Polish or German or something, owns it. I just assume they hold on to the property to maintain some sort of tangible asset in the United States. But when I was young, around the ages of 18 or 20, my cousins, brothers, and I would get away from our family to smoke weed in the abandoned cottage to avoid any sort of scolding. It was fun. It was an empty cottage with some furniture that was like a time capsule from the 80s. We would peer around and look at the old brown love seat, the dark den, the main living room adjoining the dining area, and the cute little kitchen with old wine glasses laying around. It was resoundingly acknowledged that others had visited the abandoned cottage as well. There were smoked joints on the ground, footprints, old beer bottles with modern labels, and furniture was always moved from one position to another. However, the cottage was never spruced up. It was never cleaned nor organized, so we knew the owners weren't coming by anytime soon. It was usually just random explorers, perhaps other teenagers, doing the same thing we did. Upon some curious investigation, we saw a basement. We opened the door and saw a staircase that led to a floor that was pure dirt. Looked like a cellar, from what I could see anyway. I stood at the top of the stairs looking down and saw exposed brick, but nothing particularly interesting. Of course, we would freak each other out saying someone lives down there and that there was some serial killer living there, or there was a corpse collection buried under the dirt floors. So none of us would go down there with our independent conviction. It would have to have been a dare or some sort of display of bravery. One day around Thanksgiving, 4 of us, 3 girls and my brother, went to the abandoned cottage to go smoke some joints and gossip about family and stuff. I don't see my cousins much, only during special occasions, so we sat on the tables in the dining area to smoke, chill, and chit-chat. Of course, the topic of the basement came up. We laughed and talked about who would go down there, who would most likely survive the serial killer living beneath us, waiting for his next victim to enter his abode. We turned and noticed the basement door was unlocked. And this was unusual, since it was always locked. The one occasion where it was unlocked was when we took a look, or one of my brothers would go down there, freak us all out, and prove his macho, so to speak. We would always lock it afterwards, though, purely out of the feeling of some sort of reassurance. We chalked it up to other teenagers just like us, having visited the cottage before. And so all of us girls made my older brother get up and lock the door. He stood, looked us all up and down, and jokingly said something along the lines of, "You guys are just so soft, always getting a man to do the scary thing for you." We laughed, but he was the guy. If there was someone down there, he would be the most likely to defend himself. He's a big boy, 210 pounds and 6'5". He took maybe 3 steps before there was a knock. It sounded like a knock on a hollow surface coming from somewhere. Considering that this cottage was quite old, I thought that it came from the side of the building. I don't think there's any significant insulation that would prevent an audible knock. I instantly looked at my brother, who looked pretty smug, and said, "If you ask me to do something for you, don't mess with me while I'm trying to do you a favor." I looked around, waiting for one of the 2 other girls, my cousins, to fess up and mock his masculine courage. It seemed like everyone was resoundingly confused, anxious, and waiting for the same thing I was. I guess my brother saw their reactions and did not see mine, so concluded that I was the source of the suspicious knocker, since my back was turned to him. "Very funny, Jenna. You think you're such a joker," my brother said with a chuckle. I turned to him, and I guess he saw my anxious face and was able to read me. I thought that maybe him walking on the old floors unsettled some of the structural integrity of the building. Maybe it was one of our parents messing with us. I didn't think it was from a foreign source or anything. I quipped at him, "Just go lock the door." He continued walking toward the door, but it opened slightly. He stopped dead in his tracks immediately. "Forget the freaking door, let's leave." One of my cousins sternly declared this, and we all got up from sitting on the tables. We gathered our things, including weed, beer bottles, and phones. We quickly ran to the door, not daring to look back. My brother was the last of the anxious conga line that was created by this bottleneck of the lone exit. I heard significant footsteps coming from the back of the cottage. I thought it was my brother, and I turned back, and I swear to God, I saw a hand opening the basement door. I yelled that there's someone in the freaking basement to everyone. I managed to shakingly say this after running down the stairs that led to the front door. Everyone asked me what I had just said in disbelief. My brother looked back. No way. He held on to the sides of my arms and pushed me to go faster. Then we heard a foreign voice say, "Go." We ran faster, dropping bottles, pipes, and shoes. We ran so fast, our flip-flops flew off. I knew it wasn't any of us. Not even one of our parents. It was a low, stern voice from afar. My brother was right behind me. We made our escape to our cottage, thoroughly flustered and terrified. There was a homeless guy in there. I freaking saw him. My brother, out of breath, managed to tell us what he saw. I guess it was common knowledge that the place was abandoned. I wouldn't neglect the possibility of someone taking refuge in there. I don't know if the guy went down into the basement when he heard us coming and then got tired of sitting on the dirt floor, then scared us. I don't know. It's a private beach, so you'd have to know of the specific location to be able to understand how to get there. You'd also have to know that there's an abandoned property as well. I do know that there are squatters. To offer a further explanation, people will share on Reddit that there are certain locations in our area where you could set up camp on a vacant lot and take a day to sit on the quiet beach. But I know that neighboring properties crack down on that pretty quickly and let them know that they can't settle there. I thought that might have explained things. We ran to our parents after proactively hiding our weed stash. You know, priorities. And we told them our story. They called the police, and we watched from afar to see what was going on. I guess the guy left. The police came to us and told us no one was in there, but they let us know to file some sort of report regarding the abandonedness of the cottage. I think there's some sort of laws that demand that the owners should be using the cottage and upkeep it. None of us really cared for ratting anyone out, so we never filed such a report. At the end of the day, I understand that some people just want to have assets, whether they're crappy or not. It would suck to lose out on a good property in a nice location. I think they might come back one day, since our neighbors know of the family. No one else has ever filed a report to my knowledge. I guess the experience didn't shake up my brother too much, since he went back and gave me details. He found some dead squirrels and baby raccoons just laying in the living room. He said they looked quite fresh. I think they died of natural causes, but how do two different species of animals just die in the same place? I asked him if they were mangled or anything, or obviously killed in some way, and he said no. He said the baby raccoons had fur too. I did some research, and I know that baby raccoons aren't born with fur, so I figured that they were alive for some time and then died in the living room. I don't want to know if something or someone killed them there. Or maybe killed them in another place and then brought them in there to give some sort of message to any oncoming visitors. I hope it isn't the homeless guy. I'm a 19-year-old female, and a few years ago, when I was about 16, me and a male friend of mine decided to go drive around in the country and look for some cool old houses that are still hanging around. We live in a very small town in Kansas, so we had a ton of country to explore. We'd been driving for about an hour or so, just taking random turns, and had found a few houses already. I thought we spotted a building or something in some trees, and as we got closer, we discovered it was a small shed. But not too far from the shed was a small rundown house. We pulled up the dirt driveway, and laying in the middle of the driveway was half a carcass of a deer. It was strange, but we lived in Kansas, and we were practically in the middle of nowhere, so we figured a mountain lion had gotten it or something. As we came up closer to the house, we noticed that there wasn't just one deer. There were probably close to 20 or 30 deer that were half gone just laying in the yard around the house. We got out of the truck and started to walk up to the house, still thinking that it was just some weird coincidence that these deer had all died here. My friend wanted to explore more and see the inside of the house, but I wasn't really into that idea, so I stayed outside. The area was quiet, and I walked around a little bit. I was curious how old the house was, and if there were many other old abandoned houses like this close by. I walked around the back of the house, but what really made me run for the truck was the hundreds of bones laying in the yard. I mean hundreds. It was so weird and so creepy, and I think I flew back into the truck. As soon as I closed the door, my friend came tearing out of the house as fast as he could with this look of pure terror and disgust on his face. He jumped in, started the truck, and we took off down the road. We got a little further down the road, and he finally looked at me and said that there were dead animals everywhere in that house. I don't know what was going on in there. Maybe some illegal hunting going on or something. though I don't know why anyone would hunt small animals like skunks and possums. Apparently, they were everywhere inside. Anyways, it was super creepy, and we've never gone poking around abandoned homes again. About 10 years ago, a group of my friends and I were finishing up a game of football at a local pitch. We were bored and decided to wander around our Welsh village town just as it was turning to night. We were all about 14 years old and still hadn't explored our surroundings, let alone in the dark. Our town was known for a few abandoned buildings that were left to rot and were never reopened. Many school playground rumors circulated of drug addicts and mentally insane squatting inside. It wasn't strange to pass a few buildings all boarded up on a walk through the village. After crossing a bridge into the industrial state, we came across an abandoned building with a barbed wire fence outside and a security guard post. The building looked as though a company had rushed moving out and left most of their stuff behind. With everyone bowing down to peer pressure, we slid under the spiked fence one by one and approached the building. Pieces of paper and damaged wood furniture were strewn along the entrance. It was really eerie, like they had just left earlier that day. The doors weren't even locked. They were literally open full swing. Being the teenage yobs that we were, we went inside and wrecked the place. We literally threw computer monitors out the second story windows and smashed up tables and chairs. The building was far enough from the main road that we weren't in fear of being heard. Every room had at least two doors, so it was possible to run full circle upstairs and see partially through the building. Our silhouettes bouncing back and forth from room to room. Some kids were confused about who was who, as there was a big group of us, and it was getting pretty dark. It was pretty easy to scare each other this way. Eventually, our teenage rage and laughter seemed to have settled. We decided to all leave, and on the way out, I realized I'd forgotten my football. I went back upstairs and found it in the corner room when I heard a door slam shut. I looked out the window and saw that everyone was already outside by the fence calling for me and waiting. There were then these muffled noises coming from the stairs, and I thought I saw a silhouetted figure slowly emerging and starting to traverse the second floor. Thinking I had miscounted, I thought it was a mate trying to mess with me by not saying anything and maybe jump scare me. But it wasn't. This scruffy black blob walked into the room adjacent to me. The floorboard squeaked as I took a step, and we both jumped. Visibly stunned and staring in my direction, he approached me saying nothing but a few grumbled noises. Terrified out of my 14-year-old mind, I absolutely freaking sprinted to the other corner of the building and pretty much vaulted out the window onto the extension's roof below, briefly seeing him coming in my direction. I darted to the spiked fence, and Indiana Jones rolled under. I caught up with my friends by the bridge, and while some believed me, no one wanted to go back and check anyway. A few days later, we did go back in the daytime to find it ablaze and surrounded with fire engines. We never learned what the place actually was or how the fire started, but the shared belief is that squatters were smoking crack amongst the vast amount of flammable material. It's since been demolished, but I won't forget it. So this happened when I was 18 years old and visiting Calgary, Alberta one summer. I'd been doing a road trip with my boyfriend and a few friends, and we'd been staying at some cabins we rented. The cabins were not too far away from a childhood friend that we were visiting that had moved to Calgary the previous year. So one night, we're having a get-together over dinner at a restaurant, and for some reason the subject of ghost towns and abandoned houses came up. There were a few old houses, and one in particular that was pretty well known and not too far out. Well, one of the days, my boyfriend thought it would be fun to check it out. Our other friends were busy and wanting to check out some water slides and stuff. But I went with my boyfriend as it was nice to have it just be the two of us, since it had been a fairly busy time with all of us together. So we packed some snacks and water and ventured out. Drove past some beautiful farms on the way, and there were all sorts of side roads that looked like we could explore, although we didn't want to get lost. We made it to the right road, parked, and walked up the trails that would lead us to the house. It was under 10 minutes for sure, and soon we could see the outline of a roof through the trees. It was a withered, pale yellow house, and although it looked definitely abandoned, structurally it looked pretty solid, not sagging or anything. We noticed that it looked like someone had a campfire in the yard. Although it was reportedly abandoned, there was a story of a guy who'd been living there briefly, although he did get reported. He says his family had owned the house way back, and he had a right to stay there. But this guy couldn't back his claim and was subsequently arrested. Apparently he was quite difficult to deal with. The teens would have liked that because apparently he would chase them off his property. Anyways, we decided to go inside and check it out. I don't know if I was expecting there to be no furniture or what, but there was still furniture in there, although it was pretty sparse, raggedy, and old. My boyfriend and I enjoyed our time together. He found some old dusty books and was speculating how old they might be. It was pretty cool. Anyways, he put his arm around me and suggested we take advantage of the time we had alone together. We put a blanket out and got our snacks and stuff. And just when we were about to kiss, my boyfriend froze and said, "Do you smell that?" And it was then that I could smell it. Cigarette smoke. I whispered to my boyfriend, "So no one's living here, right?" I guess I thought back to that guy. He said, "No, but maybe someone's just checking the place out too and is smoking." Well, we probably would have heard someone come up. It was then that you could hear squeaking of the floorboards above us. Someone was walking above our heads, slow and deliberate steps that seemed to be making their way over to the staircase. My boyfriend then quickly said, "Grab the stuff." Someone had been upstairs the whole time we were there. We wrapped everything up in one fell swoop and started to book it out of there as we were freaked right out. As we were leaving out the door and along the porch, we could hear the scramble of frantic footsteps thumping quickly down the staircase, as if someone was giving chase. It was then we sprinted back down the pathway, my boyfriend grabbing my hand tight. We made it to the car and just tried to process what had happened. When we later met up with our friends, we told them what happened, and it was suggested maybe a homeless person had been living there. But I wonder, could it have been that same fellow who had been staying there before? The one who claimed to have had family ties to the place. He was arrested, but had he been released? These old abandoned houses are pretty special. Pretty hauntingly beautiful sometimes. And also pretty terrifying.